I'm Jack Smackey, and this is my van build. I'm taking this once empty cargo truck and converting it into a tiny living space. And in this week's video, we're going to be installing a kilowatt of solar. That's right, 200 watts 5 times. In last week's video, I painted the lower galley cabinet. I installed the countertop, including the flip-up extension, installed the backsplash, and installed all the lighting for the galley under the cabinets. In this week's video, I'm going to return my focus back onto the electrical system. Now there is still quite a bit left on this electrical system to wire up, including the batteries, all of the solar, and the inverter charger, as well as everything that's 110 needs to be connected to that panel there. While I hope that the system will maintain itself, I've got 1,000 watts of solar on the roof, and I've got 400 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries. So I'm hoping that the solar itself will take care of the battery charging on its own. Now, just in case I overuse my power, or if I'm actually in a location where it might be shaded or whatever, and I have the ability to plug in, I'm going to install a shore power system. Now the Victron MultiPlus can be connected. It has an input so you can plug into it. It does have an output for 110 power, and then of course it connects up to the batteries and utilizes it, converts the 12 volt system into a 110 system. So that's how that's going to work. So depending upon what kind of power is available to me, this will plug right into the van, and then I have a 30 amp extension cord here. Now 30 amp receptacle is not available. I have a 110, 20 or 15 amp adapter, and if a 50 amp a plug-in is available, I can adapt that to a 30 amp plug as well and plug this into there. Okay, so I cut a hole. It's about a 5 by 5 roughly hole, and I'm going to plug it with some plywood. Got some 2 3/4 and a 1/2 inch plywood, so that'll make up. It'll come back out flush. I'll fasten this together with thickened epoxy, and then fasten it to the fiberglass with thickened epoxy. And then once that sets, then I'll be able to drill a hole for this to fit through the wall. And then I got a nice solid, I got solid wood to screw this into, so that I can get a nice tight seal and it's well supported. All right, now that the epoxy set up, I can drill this hole. There we go. Okay, so I've got the hole for the shore power drilled through, and I've got all the bus bars and the fuse blocks here laid out in about where I need to have them, or where they'll work the best. And then here I've got the plug, and I'm getting set to install the wires. I stripped the jacket off, and I just went with the bare wires. Much easier to handle. I didn't need the red wire anyways. This was in order to go with a 6 gauge wire, which is oversized, I had to go with a 50 amp plug, which meant I had 2 hot wires. So I don't need the red wire, I just need the black, the white, and the green for a 30 amp. So, but I did want to go with a heavier wire just to make sure that I was overkill on that. Such a short distance from the plug to the inverter charger, but even still, just minimize the risk for fire damage or anything. So carefully cut around the insulation, pull it off. Now the
The plug here is color coded, white, green, and black. So be careful and cautious on exactly how you install these. Make sure you get all the wires in and you push that wire in all the way. And then we can tighten that down. There we go. There it is. Alright, again, make sure we got the wires in the correct order and the plug facing the right direction. Okay. Okay, now let's go in and have a look. Alright, well, clearly it's a just barely fit situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my router in here and I'm going to router out and round off this edge right here, and hopefully that'll alleviate any pressure on these wires, so that'll sit there nicely. All right, that's a lot better. That's a lot better. That'll lay there nicely. Okay, good. All right, so we got the outlet is mounted in. We got the wires tied together. We come down and hit this 50 amp fuse. Come around and go into the AC input of the inverter charger. And just like that, install and wire shore power. Done. Okay, that's it. That is the solar charge controller and the solar panel wires all hooked up and ready to go. So again, we've got the solar panels coming into a sub panel. The sub panel going to an off kill switch, goes to the solar controller. From the solar controller, we got a positive fuse to a positive bus bar, and then it goes down to the negative bus bar, which then those end up getting connected to the battery bank, which is the next. But with that said, I think I can go over here to this my list. Where are we? Fuses, solar panels, wire the solar panel sub panel, that's done. Wire the MPPT controller, that is done. Alright, to make matters a little bit more confusing, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but I've just ran the AC out. So the AC out goes over to this 110 panel. Unfortunately, the breaker broke, so I've got to order a new breaker. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, because that's an expensive situation. One more system down, almost down. This one right here, this is our power output, AC out, which goes to this 110 breaker panel. Okay, so I've got I got this sub panel here in the cab over. I've got the cab over lights and the shower light wired. So waiting on a plug that I'm going to install right here that I'm going to use for the toilet vent. So that'll be a watertight connection. So that's done. We've got the touch lights, or the touch switches for the lights installed. This is the main cabin. This will be the accent lights that are going to go above the upper cabinets here. And a similar switch on this side, which is for the galley lights. Now, for these accent lights that are going to go above these cabinets, what I've got here is these are little aluminum tracks, and these diffusers that snap in there. And then I've got this roll of LED strips, which is going to go inside of that track. And then while I picked up that LED strip, I picked up these little connectors, which allow us to cut this LED strip wherever we want. Well, there's marks where they want you to cut, but we can cut it to fit inside this track, and then we can mount them up above there and get those wired. So what I need to do now is I need to cut these down a little bit. So I've got the LED rail up top here. I fastened it down with some all-purpose adhesive, and I just put a few dollops along each rail. And then what I did up here is I got a long board, and I just measured over, using it as a straight edge to, you know, locate these rails. So I'm going to try to get the bird's eye view here. And I've got a hole down on that end for the wires. So I'm just going to place that down there, somewhat even to each end. I got about an inch of play here, so I'm not too concerned about exactly where it's got to go. And then I'll just push down on this adhesive and set this aluminum rack. There we go. So what I've got here are some aluminum angles. These are about 12 inches long. I've got 2 holes in the one side, and I'm going to drill 3 holes in the other. These are going to get top riveted onto the sides of the solar panels. There's going to be one about here, one in the middle, and here. So there'll be 6 of these brackets, these angles for each solar panel. And then on the roof, there is strut material that I've got anchored down, and I'm going to use these strut nuts to secure the angle to the roof.
these strut nuts fit inside the strut, and then I just drop the bolt and washer through, and they tighten right up. I don't have to worry about anything leaking because this is all, you know, above the roof, and that secures really, really, really tight. So shouldn't be a problem whatsoever with that. Well, like with any good plan, they tend to fail. It seems I've miscalculated. I designed this whole system last fall, and you know, I didn't really implement anything. I just I got the rails up, I did some preliminary measurements and whatnot, and I calculated that I wanted to have 3 of these angles per panel to support it. So there's going to be, of course, the single panel in the middle, and then there's going to be 2 panels on this end, with the ends of the panels right here in the middle point. Now, if I continue to go with the 3 angle set, I'm not going to have any room here to mount the other 2 panels. There just isn't enough space. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate the middle angle, and that'll allow enough space in between for the 2 panels to butt up with their own angle sets. So yeah. Oh yeah, that's super solid, even with just 2 brackets. Perfect. It'll be fine, just fine. All right, so solar is looking pretty good. I got all 5 panels up here. I got to make the electrical connections underneath 4 and permanently mount 4 as well. As you can see here with the brackets down the middle there, they're pretty consolidated, so I couldn't have really done anything different. So hopefully the rest goes pretty well. Otherwise, this looks damn good. And we can go over here to the to-do list, and we can go ahead and move the install solar panels to the done pile. That's a pretty gratifying thing to do. All right, so I've got the right lugs this time. These are number 2 lugs. These are the right lugs I have for the cabling for the batteries that I'm going to be using. So now I can finally tidy up and finish up the battery wiring.
So I've got 400 amp hours of lithium batteries by Battleborn. They're wired in series for 12 volts. They're constantly being topped up by 1,000 watts of solar that's mounted on the roof and coming through and controlled by the solar charge controller. The 12 volt comes over and it powers the 12 volt panel, which covers all of our lighting and USB outlets. 12 volt also goes into this inverter charger, which converts it from 12 volts to 120 volts, which goes into this 120 volt panel, which powers the refrigerator, the induction cooktop, and a few outlets in the build as well. This inverter charger is also capable of having shore power. So we have a 30 amp shore power that we can connect to an outside source. And what that does is it not only does it power the 120 volt system, but it also can charge the batteries as well. So if we need to charge the batteries up when it's a cloudy day or for whatever reason, we can go ahead and plug that in. I also took some advice from one of you viewers who suggested I install some positive airflow. You'll have to wait till next week to see how this turns out. We'll test the systems and I'll show you a bunch of other things I've been working on in the van. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out my Patreon below if you'd like to support my journey. Thank you very much. See you next week.